Christian nationalism, properly understood, isn't a conservative project. It's an attempt to socialize religion. It's the instinct to secure through government backing what a free market would otherwise force you to earn through actual devotion. Alright, so Jared from Heliocentric just put out a video about his trip to London, Westminster Abbey, the Church of England, and the Breakwater Festival. I don't want to be upfront about something before I say a single critical word. It's a good video. He's a thoughtful atheist, he engages faith communities in good faith, and he lands on something interesting. He compares England, where Christianity has state backing, to America, where it doesn't. He notices that the established church feels quiet, empty, almost like a museum, while American churches are, in his words, constantly hustling for your attention. And he's right about that, but he admires it, whereas I see a different view. I made a similar argument about it myself in a video about Christian nationalism a few weeks ago. So Jared there, he draws a different conclusion than I do about what that means, and I think working through why we disagree is going to take us somewhere really interesting. Somewhere that involves an interfaith meeting I sat in, a conservative rabbi and an Episcopalian priest who didn't realize that they were standing on the strongest evidence for my argument and not theirs. Now let's give credit where it's due, because I want this to be a real dialogue and not a straw man takedown. Jared's central observation from Westminster Abbey is basically identical to mine, but he admires it. He takes it in the opposite view that I do. England's churches generally are gorgeous, ancient, dignified, but largely empty. He describes the Church of England as feeling settled, mature, almost indifferent to whether anyone shows up, because it's been propped up by the state for centuries and doesn't have to compete for a congregation the way American churches do. Meanwhile, he describes American churches as constantly in sale pitch mode. Billboards on the highway competing for attention, and he says it seems a little unhinged. And I said almost the exact same thing in my own video, using a different language. He calls it the difference between a church that's settled versus one that's still fighting for its life. I call it the difference between an established religious monopoly that is fighting for its life and a free market of religion that creates the best goods and services. The same observation, different vocabulary, and different views. Where we start to diverge into what we think that competition is actually for and who's doing the competing. I'm Rabbi Joseph Kolakowski, the Koblenzer Rebbe. If you're new to my channel, please like, share, and subscribe, comment. If you enjoy this content, you might want to consider maybe becoming a member of the channel as well. Now, here's the detail from Jared's video that I actually think is the most important thing in it, and he plays it mostly for a joke. He gets into a conversation with an Anglican friend about the fact that Henry VIII started the Church of England essentially to get a divorce that the Pope wouldn't grant him. And he jokes about it, which is fair, it's objectively funny. His friend pushes back a little, arguing that Henry was more of a catalyst than the true founder, and the Anglican theology sees itself as one branch of a wounded, divided Catholic Church, which is kind of ironic because Catholic should mean universal, rather than some brand new invention. And that's a legitimate theological point, and I respect it, but doesn't change the structural fact underneath it. To this day, the reigning monarch of England holds the formal title as the Supreme Governor of the Church of England, sitting above the Archbishop of Canterbury in the Church's own constitutional order. Bishops sit in the House of Lords. Jared says this himself, almost in passing, that the Church's Supreme Governor is literal king of the country, and then moves on like it's just a fun historical footnote. But it's not a footnote. It's the whole ball game. That is the textbook dictionary definition of church and state fused into a single office. If the term Christian nationalism means anything coherent, a national government and a national religion sharing one head of authority, the Church of England isn't an example of it. It's the origin of the concept in the English-speaking world, which is what makes it so interesting that so many people warning Americans about the dangers of Christian nationalism belong to or admire exactly this kind of arrangement. And it's really what they want. The ones who whine the most against Christian nationalism really want it. And they don't even realize it. And this is where I want to bring in something that happened to me personally, because I think it explains the blind spot in Jared's video better than anything I could argue in the abstract. A year or two ago, I was at an Interfaith clergy meeting. A group of us, rabbis, pastors, priests, imams, lay leaders from different religions, spent a chunk of the meeting where some of those people, I'm probably one of the more right-wing people there, and most of the people there were on the left, and they were warning each other of the dangers of Christian nationalism. They said it's coercive and a threat to pluralism, all the standard and large and well-known critiques. And this had been going on for a few months. We meet once a month. So at one point, a conservative rabbi in the room, a sincere, serious person, I want to be fair to her, was actually giving out little dog tags and saying that this was to remember the people who died on October 7th. And I said, I certainly care about the people who died on October 7th. I knew one of them when he was a child, and I was a rabbi serving down south. And I feel as someone from kind of the Satmar world, he would still be alive today if he had just stayed in America. Like, Zionism killed him, indirectly. Of course, directly Hamas killed him. But there was a different issue that I want to bring up here. Basically, what she was saying was Jewish nationalism, right? That's what Zionism is, right? Jewish nationalism. And I was like, wait a second, why is Christian nationalism bad and Jewish nationalism good? Nobody blinked, nobody objected. A lot of people were really interested in this discussion, but I was nervous and I felt bad. And we got along well. But I asked the obvious question, why is Jewish nationalism sacred in this room and Christian nationalism treated as some kind of emergency that we have to get rid of? I have my own reasons rooted in my Satmar ideology and hashkafa to oppose Jewish nationalism, including religious Jewish nationalism. When it comes to Christian nationalism, it's less of my business what they do, right? But as an American, though, I appreciate the free market that we have, which is what we're going to talk about more. But I was asking for this inconsistency to be explained, and nobody had an answer. One of the loudest voices in the room against Christian nationalism was an Episcopalian pastor, and she was a member of that Christian tradition that comes from the Anglican Communion. So she would say, "Oh, there's no such thing as nationalism in Christianity," but like her church came literally out of that, and that's not a gotcha. It's the same blind spot that Jared had in his video, just in a different costume. You can clearly see that the Church of England is quiet, tired, and institutionally captured, and even name, almost as a joke, the exact mechanism that makes it that way. What doesn't quite connect is the anxiety people that express about Christian nationalism in America is very often really anxiety about American religion behaving like an unregulated market instead of behaving like England's regulated state-sanctioned one. But the truth is, the English version is Christian nationalism, and the American version is not. So here's where Jared and I really part ways. And it's not about the facts. We agree on the facts. It's about what conclusion to draw from them. Jared looks at America's religious hustle. It's billboard preachers. It's constant competition for your attention. And mostly reads it as exhausting, lonely, consumeristic, a neurotic pick-me-please energy, to use his phrase. He finds more peace and more honest conversation in spaces like the Breakwater Festival, which he describes as refreshingly non-competitive, ecumenical, and low pressure, whereas quite often the conferences in America were all about apologetics. I don't disagree that competition can get ugly or performative, but I think he's mistaking the symptoms of a free market working correctly for a pathology. The free market is supposed to be a little exhausting. That's what happens when nobody's audience is guaranteed to them. Every single religious institution in America has to actually earn its people week after week, or it dies. There's no state check propping the doors open the way there is for Westminster Abbey or through most of Europe. I remember years ago I had applied to be the chief rabbi of Munich, Germany. I had an interview on the phone. They didn't call me to go visit Munich. And they described to me how basically all religion in Germany is government run. You pay a tax and it goes to your church or synagogue or mosque. That's that's kind of scary to me as an American, to be honest. So the result is the thing that Jared's own video documents, without quite naming it, is that America is more religious than England, specifically because it doesn't have England's stability. The instability is the engine, not the disease. England and other European countries, they have the calm, dignified, empty cathedral. America has the chaotic, competitive, actually attended church. You can only pick one, and I know which one I'd rather have leading people to God. And actually, I don't have to speculate about the pushback to all this. I already got it in the comments under Jared's own video. I left a comment laying out basically the free market argument you just heard. America has a religious free market. Europe has empty museums because they socialized religion. And socialism, whether religious or economic, and often in religion the word oikonomos, economy, works as well, tends to produce mediocrity at best and corruption at worst. If you don't like a church here in America, you leave. In England, the king is literally, constitutionally, the head of the church. You can't leave that structure, even though, judging by attendance, everyone's already left it in their hearts. Two people push back, and I think both objections are worth taking seriously on camera because you're probably thinking one of them right now. One commentator made a real theological argument. He said Christianity actually works best when Christians are a minority. And that's the irony. Comfort and power corrupt faith, and scarcity purifies it. And I take that seriously. It's not only a Christian idea, it's a Jewish idea. But if you go back to the early church under Rome, being a persecuted minority and competing in a genuinely free, non-coercive market are not the same thing, even though from the outside they can look similar. The early church wasn't just outnumbered, it was being fed to lions. That's persecution and not competition. Persecution can absolutely refine individual believers, sure, but it doesn't build durable institutions generation after generation. It produces martyrs and catacombs, not the kind of scaled, lasting religious life you need for a whole society to stay religious over the centuries. It might be good stories to tell to keep that. What America has isn't persecution, and it isn't establishment either. It's something rarer than both. Faith that has to earn people without a sword against it and without the state behind it. And the point I was making is that because they were saying, well, look, the Jews in Golders Green, they're not part of the Church of England, and there are Catholics and Baptists and all other kinds, and atheists and plenty of Muslims now in England, and they're not under the Church of England. But what I was explaining is that, especially because Jared was talking about all of the non-church Christians who were buried in Westminster Abbey, the scientists and authors and poets and so forth, and because they're part of the English culture, right? And so Sir Isaac Newton, who was Unitarian, still was buried there. Stephen Hawking, who I believe was an atheist or at least an agnostic, also buried in Westminster Abbey. And in a sense, I said a Jew or a Muslim or a Catholic in England is kind of like a Christian or a Muslim in Israel, whereas the atheist Brit in England is like the atheist Jew in Israel, the Israeli who doesn't go to the synagogue. And so you have there in Israel also the Rabbanut and all this. And that kind of answers with the second pushback that came from another commenter who said essentially, what do you mean you can't leave? This person, he said he's an atheist in the UK, nobody's stopping him. And he's right as an individual, but that's not quite what I mean, because he's still British, right? You can absolutely opt out personally, but what you can't do is make the state opt out. The king is supreme governor of the Church of England by law. That's not merely ceremonial, it's a constitutional office sitting above the Archbishop of Canterbury itself. And it's probably like the biggest power that the British, we always say, oh, the British monarchy is just a figurehead, but when it comes to the church, that's where his actual power lies, right? So Britain still has an official state religion, whether any individual citizen personally believes it or not. And that's the same relationship that a secular Israeli has with the chief rabbinate of Israel, the Rabbanut. You could be as atheist as you want, but the state still funds and empowers an official religious authority you didn't choose and can't disestablish just by ignoring it. And in Israel it's even stronger, because you can't get married, you can't get divorced, you can't get anything without the Rabbanut if you're Jewish, even if you're not of the Jewish faith, but you're still a Jew, right? And then if you're of another religion, go through that other religion, but there is no civil marriage in Israel. I'm not sure what it is in England. Now, America doesn't have that. There's no federal religion, official or otherwise, for anyone, religious or secular, to answer to. And that's the actual comparison, which brings me back to my own original thesis, now sharpened by Jared's own footage. Christian nationalism, properly understood, isn't a conservative project. It's an attempt to socialize religion. It's the instinct to secure through government backing what a free market would otherwise force you to earn through actual devotion. England did that 400 years ago, and Jared's own video shows you exactly what it produces. Beautiful, empty buildings, a shrinking, aging congregation, and in his words, not mine, a religion that feels more like civic duty than living faith. Meanwhile, here in our own country, where Jared is from, here in the USA, the people most anxious about Christian nationalism are often structurally pulling toward the English model. Official recognition, institutional legitimacy, a guaranteed seat at the table, which also means we can shut up the people we don't like, which is what it's really about, and which it was about early on in colonial America. Right before the Revolution, there were Baptist preachers in the South who refused to get a license to minister, or weren't even allowed to take one, and so they got sent to prison, and then they would preach Sunday morning through the prison bars, and hundreds of people would gather to listen to them preach, because they were preaching their own understanding of the gospel and not the official government version. So And that in England and in Israel you have this, and in Germany and Scandinavian countries you have that official government approach, and then in countries like France and for a long time in Turkey you had like forced secularism, and certainly in the communist countries. Here in America we have something totally unique: the messy, competitive, small R Republican model that actually made American religion the most alive religious culture on earth. So I appreciate Jared's honesty and his openness from sitting with believers instead of just debating them. That's rare and it's valuable. I just think he filmed the single best piece of evidence for my thesis and read it as a punchline instead of a headline. So if Jared, I don't know if Jared is watching this, if you ever want to sit down and actually talk this through, I take that conversation a heartbeat. You clearly care about getting this right, and so do I. And to everyone else watching, England didn't lose its religion despite having an established church. It lost it because it had one. And so some people on the right who espouse Christian nationalism maybe want to ask, is that what you want, right? Because America hasn't held on to its religion despite the chaos of the free market. It's held on because of it. If this response gave you something to chew on, hit the like. Helps this conversation reach people who need to see both sides of it. Subscribe, hit that bell button so you can catch the next one. And if you want deeper dives like this, more Torah study, more of these dialogues across faith lines, the channel membership link is below. Many of our videos are for members first. So go check out Jared's original video too. And you should hear it from his own words, not just my response to it. But, you know, what do you think? You know, tell me in the comments below, what are your thoughts on this subject? I really think that people don't understand. Sometimes you get what you wish for, and it's not what you really wanted. So, I'll see you in the next one. God bless. Please like, share, and subscribe, comment. We'll see you later.
We hope you enjoyed this content. This channel has over 5,000 videos, including Torah commentary, podcasts, footage of Jewish and historical events, and much more. We are sure you will find more videos you will enjoy. Please like, share, subscribe, hit the bell button, and comment. Rabbi Kulikowski often makes videos based on questions in the comment section, so you might have a video made just for you. By helping this channel grow, you are helping to spread Torah. God bless.
Yibnei HaMikdash, Hirtzia ente Malai.